Hello and welcome to the Nexus. This week, with the year almost over, we're looking back at some of the biggest stories of 2022. So, coming up in the program.
Are the people, the Jewish businessmen that led me to that place, are they sorry for the way they've raped my
I don't know who you're talking about in particular, but I don't know why you keep having to say
And
they're
by the way,
Jewish.
you wouldn't-
What does the
but
fact
you would-
they're Jewish got to do with anything? Why do you keep doing that?
What do you mean? They're the Jewish businessmen that did that because
They're business
they are.
people.
That's what they did.
Why do you keep saying Jewish business people?
Accusations of anti-Semitism. Kanye is cancelled for making derogatory remarks about Jewish people. He says losing his fortune just proves his point. Also on the program.
The abbey that married her. The abbey where she was crowned. Waits to receive this gentle Christian soul.
The death of the Queen. Britain and hundreds of world leaders paid their respects to the late monarch. But there were also some diplomatic faux pas at Her Majesty's funeral. But first, surely the biggest story of the year, Russia's attack on Ukraine. Vladimir Putin ordered the so-called special military operation to begin on February the 24th.
Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции. Ее цель – защита людей, которые на протяжении 8 лет подвергаются издевательствам, геноциду со стороны киевского режима. И для этого мы будем стремиться к демилитаризации и денацификации Украины, а также преданию суду тех, кто совершил многочисленные кровавые преступления против мирных жителей, в том числе и граждан Российской Федерации.
Shortly after his speech, explosions were heard across the country, including the capital, Kyiv. Over the past 10 months, the UN estimates more than 15,000 Ukrainian civilians have been killed, although Ukraine says the number is actually much higher. Russia's military has also suffered heavy losses, with Ukraine's military widely acknowledged as having fought very well against enormous odds to protect their country, which has, of course, received a great deal of military support from the West. Russia has lost much of the territory it's gained during the offensive earlier in the year and has been forced to mobilize hundreds of thousands of reservists. But they're not the only ones joining the fight. Mercenaries, such as the Wagner group, are too. When Russia launched its attack on Ukraine in late February, it also allegedly sent in a small private army known as the Wagner group. According to the Times newspaper, it was tasked with assassinating President Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky found out about the plot and put the capital under a hard curfew for 36 hours in order to catch the would-be assassins.
За наявною у нас інформацією, ворог позначив мене як ціль номер 1, мою родину як ціль номер 2. Вони хочуть знищити Україну політично, знищивши главу держави.
The president has now reportedly survived multiple attempts on his life, at least 2 by Wagner mercenaries. The Russian government denies it deployed the Wagner group and says it has no links to private armies, which are illegal in Russia. The West doesn't believe that.
We've got to tighten the economic vice around Putin, sanctioning more people today as we are, sanctioning the Wagner group, looking at what we can do to stop Putin using his gold reserves, but also doing more to help the Ukrainians defend themselves.
The following month, Christo Grozev, the head of the investigative website Bellingcat, told British MPs that nearly 8,000 Wagner mercenaries had been deployed to Ukraine and that 3,000 of them had already been killed.
These sources, or some of these sources, have actually validated to us a striking number of participation by Wagner officers in the war at the moment, which is close to 8,000. That is much higher than we expected. But more importantly, they've also given us a sense for a very high casualty rate amongst the Wagner private military mercenaries, which is about 1/3 of these people, so about 3,000 people.
Grozev also reported that Wagner mercenaries were present at the massacre of civilians in Bucha in March, corroborating a similar claim made by Germany's intelligence agency. While Russia denies official links to the group, the head of Ukraine's security services has called the Wagner group Putin's private army. But this is where experts differ. Some believe Putin does effectively control the Wagner group and that it is run by Russia's main foreign intelligence agency, the GRU. But more often, experts describe the Wagner Group as fully private sector, owned by Yevgeny Prigozhin, a Russian oligarch close to Putin. His umbrella company, Concord, owns Wagner, which is run by Dmitry Utkin, who founded the group in 2014. Yevgeny Prigozhin is unusual. Unlike other oligarchs who made their fortune through energy or finance, Prigozhin's business is food, the wholesale sausage market, restaurants, and catering for Russia's army. That's why he's sometimes known as Putin's chef.
The investment, at least until 2016, came mostly from the corporate structures, the catering companies run by Prigozhin overcharging for their services to the state by approximately 20%. So this 20% surcharge, in fact, funded the operation of the military company.
The man who runs the Wagner Group, Dmitry Utkin, is a former colonel in Russia's special forces, the Spetsnaz. His call sign was Wagner, after Richard Wagner, Hitler's favorite composer. Utkin's believed to have neo-Nazi sympathies. He's rarely caught on camera, but he was photographed with Vladimir Putin after receiving the Order of Courage award from the president in 2016. In a way, the Wagner Group doesn't really exist. Experts say it's not a single legal entity, it's more like a shadowy network of several small firms, which makes it more difficult to monitor. Difficult, but not impossible. Its activities around the globe have been tracked by the US, the UN, and the EU for years.
They present a threat and create instability in a number of countries around the world.
The Wagner Group's first major mission was during Russia's annexation of Crimea in February 2014. Working alongside regular Russian forces, some dubbed them the Little Green Men because they were masked and wearing unmarked green uniforms. They then deployed to eastern Ukraine, reinforcing pro-Russia separatist forces in Donbass. After Ukraine, the Wagner Group expanded its operations, always in support of or aligned with Russia's interests. In the Middle East, we're talking about Syria and Libya. In Africa, multiple countries, including Mali, Mozambique, and Madagascar, Central African Republic, and Sudan. Their operations have even reached Latin America, most notably Venezuela, where they were reportedly sent to protect President Nicolás Maduro. They've often made the headlines for all the wrong reasons and have been accused of carrying out human rights abuses pretty much everywhere they've operated. So why then does Russia, the second most powerful military in the world, allegedly use them? Experts always give two main reasons. First, using the Wagner Group gives Russia plausible deniability. In other words, Wagner does Moscow's dirty work, and Russia officially keeps its hands clean. And second, it protects Putin's image at home. Russian soldiers returning in coffins draped in the flag upsets people. The public don't care nearly as much about dead mercenaries. Okay, let's bring in our guest now. And Sean McFate is a former officer in the US Army who then became a private military contractor and is now an academic who's researched the Wagner Group extensively. Yelena Aparak is also an expert on mercenaries and advises the United Nations about their activities, especially in Libya and the Central African Republic. And finally, we have Andrew Milburn, a former US Marine and founder of the Mozart Group, who's currently helping to train Ukraine's military. Welcome to all of you. Sean McFate, every private military company works for money. Who is the client here? Who's paying for their operations in Ukraine?
The client here is Russia. It's the Kremlin. And the Wagner Group has been working to extend Russian national and foreign interests since 2014.
Andrew Milburn, though, if I could just cross over to you. You're in Ukraine. You set up the Mozart Group, which I get is a reference to countering the Wagner Group. But what does your organization do? What are you hoping it will achieve?
Yes, I do want to say this, okay? So although we're called the Mozart Group, and although you said countering the Wagner Group, that's really not in our mission at all. I succumbed to the name of Mozart Group because my guys came up with it, and it seemed like it was catchy, and it gained traction very quickly. But, you know, to all of Sean's points, we have the antithesis of the Wagner Group. We are not a mercenary organization. There's nothing we do that is counter to U.S. foreign policy. And of course, U.S. foreign policy does not support mercenaries on the Ukrainian front line pulling the trigger. So that's number one. What we do is primarily training, advising, and assisting Ukrainian armed forces.
Wagner is just one of hundreds, probably thousands, of private military companies operating around the world. Given the number of human rights abuses, alleged and actual, that have been carried out by them, why is there no international law banning them?
One of the reasons why we are very much concerned about the Wagner is precisely because they don't seem to have any legal existence, as opposed to private military and security companies that have to be, or that usually are registered legally so that we can identify them. They have a statute of corporation, CEO, director, so we can identify who would be responsible person. Wagner doesn't have that legal existence, so it's very difficult to attach the operations of Wagner to a very specific person and to actually hold those persons accountable. But aside of the Wagner issue, the private military and security companies are not regulated by international legally binding instruments. And actually, next week, there is a meeting to discuss the first draft zero on the potentially legally binding instrument, and it will be discussed in Geneva. But so far, we don't have any legally binding instrument.
We'll watch out for that. Let's turn to the UK now, where there's been an unprecedented turnover of prime ministers. First, Boris Johnson was sunk by his own government. Record 60 resignations in 2 days, leading to his own rather more reluctant stepping down. Liz Truss was the next one up, and she lasted just 49 days before falling to a similar fate. Rishi Sunak's currently in the post. Let's see how long he lasts. Of course, all that political drama was overshadowed by the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, for many, the only monarch they'd ever known. Her Majesty's funeral was a very dignified affair, but as you would expect, with a large gathering of world leaders, there were a number of diplomatic missteps and tensions.
The abbey that married her, the abbey where she was crowned, waits to receive this gentle Christian soul.
It was a respectful and sombre affair, but as diplomatic occasions go, they don't come much bigger than the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. Over 500 foreign dignitaries, including around 100 heads of state, came to London to pay their respects and play some politics. Even on an occasion like this, there's still time for some diplomatic point scoring. The guest list itself was like a one-stop guide to current geopolitical tensions. 6 countries were deemed so diplomatically toxic they didn't get an invite of any kind: Syria, Venezuela, Afghanistan, Belarus, Myanmar, and of course, Russia. Moscow's foreign ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova called the lack of an invite for Russia blasphemous against the Queen's memory. Of course, Ukraine's First Lady, Olena Zelenskaya, was in attendance and got a well-publicized meeting with the new Princess of Wales. Iran, North Korea and Nicaragua just about made the cut, but were only allowed to send ambassadors. Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler Mohammed bin Salman was invited, which raised complaints from human rights activists, but he decided not to attend, which may have saved embarrassment, even though the Saudi royal family has been close to the British royal family for many years. Despite rocky relations, China's President Xi Jinping was invited to attend, but sent his vice president instead. It was certainly a bit awkward when Beijing was originally told that sanctions meant its representatives could not enter the British Parliament to see the Queen's coffin. In the end, though, they were allowed to pay their respects and even bring their own car. Which was a big diplomatic deal for China, because with London facing one of the biggest security challenges ever, with few exceptions, planners had asked leaders and royalty used to travelling in the finest corteges to catch buses to Westminster Abbey. Some Gulf Arab leaders were reportedly so offended they declined to attend, although most others were happy to pitch in, like the Kenyan president. Of course, the American president, Joe Biden, didn't have to join the hoi polloi on the coaches. He was given the honour of being allowed to use his own car, nicknamed the Beast. Biden may have got special treatment, but but he still cancelled his first full meeting at Downing Street with the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss. The Americans promised to hold it at the UN General Assembly and made good on that promise, but it was still being interpreted by some as a snub for Truss. Now, while Biden may have been worried about his security, contrast that with the French president, who went for a different approach. Emmanuel Macron was spotted walking around London. Perhaps to make up for the recent tensions with the British Prime Minister, he took extra care to express his solidarity with the British and his affection for the late Queen, even posting a thoughtful video on social media of the Queen and former French leaders.
Monsieur le Président, puisse la confiance et la compréhension mutuelle entre la République française et le Royaume-Uni durer toujours.
Canada's leader, Justin Trudeau, spoke of the Queen being one of his favourite people, and yet he still found time, amongst the sadness, for some karaoke at his hotel in London.
Easy come, easy go, little heart, little love.
That may have been insensitive of Mr. Trudeau, but the prize for most blatant use of a political opportunity may well go to Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro. He was mobbed on his arrival and gave a campaign speech from the balcony of Brazil's embassy in London. It seems that when it comes to the cynical world of international politics, even a funeral is an opportunity. Andre, can I ask you about the issuing of invitations? Not everyone got one, a few very notable exceptions. To what extent is that a government decision and a royal household decision?
Yes, there were only 6 countries that were completely not invited. The ones that you're going to be really interested in are Russia and Belarus, but of course Venezuela was also on that list. Other countries were only invited at an ambassadorial level, North Korea being a notable example. But look, the reality is that most countries around the world were invited, and in terms of how invitations operate, it's always fluid. But it's run by the Cabinet Office, which is the department that the Prime Minister himself is based in. And so whilst the royal family and their private secretaries will have a role in it, it is principally a government decision, principally a diplomatic decision, principally a decision based on the governance of the United Kingdom rather than on the specific needs of the royals themselves.
Daria, let's talk about Vladimir Putin now. He actually put out quite a heartfelt message to Prince Charles on the Kremlin website. It says here, for many decades, Elizabeth II rightfully enjoyed the love and respect of her subjects as well as authority on the world stage. I wish you courage and perseverance in the face of this heavy, irreparable loss. I ask you to convey the words of sincere sympathy and support to the members of the royal family and all the people of Great Britain. What was Vladimir Putin trying to achieve with this message?
Well, certainly when we have heard from Vladimir Putin being one of the first international leaders sending his condolences to the United Kingdom, to King Charles over the death of Queen Elizabeth II, we've seen some sort of warmth in his words. He said it was an irreparable loss. He said that she was righteously one of the most significant figures worldwide. And he said that she enjoyed the love and the respect, not only among her subjects, but also the authority on the world stage. So this is something very important, some very warm words that appear at least to be very warm.
I'm sorry to bring this up, a rather undiplomatic thing that happened in London. On Monday, the day of the funeral, Justin Trudeau was giving his condolences to the royal family, paying his respects. 2 days before, on Saturday, he was pictured singing along to Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody in a bar in his hotel. I mean, you tell me, is that two-faced, or is that just a world leader letting his hair down in what he thought was private?
No, it was a serious, I was actually going to get to that. It was a serious lapse of judgment, and it wasn't just like any bar. It was quite public, and people were taking pictures. He had similar problems a few years ago when he went to India on a state trip, and it became quite an embarrassment to the Liberal government, if not to Canadians. And certainly it was to Prime Minister Modi in India. So he still struggles with these areas of forgetting the position that he's representing. And there is no, I can tell you, there is no sympathy for him, belting out the lyrics and singing when he is supposed to be there reflecting the somber mood of, and sympathy of most Canadians. So that was a serious lapse, and it's going to cost him some.
Let's turn to our third and final story now in the Kanye West drama. Just when you thought it couldn't get any more bizarre, it does. The rapper, now going by Ye, has been hanging out with white supremacist Nick Fuentes and appearing on Alex Jones's InfoWars show. It was here that he made his most controversial comment yet.
Well, could some of the Nazis have just been fighting for their country? Oh, they're all. Oh, we can't put them all in a box.
I get the Hugo Boss uniforms, amazing. But I mean, just because you're in love with the design, you're a designer. Can we just kind of say like you like the uniforms, but that's about it?
No. There's a lot of things that I love about Hitler.
Well, I've never seen anyone make Alex Jones look uncomfortable before, but Ye managed it. And before that freaky appearance, he'd been making disparaging remarks about Jewish people. And as a result, almost every single business associated with him, including Adidas and Gap, cut ties with the artist, costing him an estimated $2 billion. It's a very sensitive story with lots of claims and counterclaims, so here's a quick reminder of how we got here.
Kanye West.
Kanye West, one of the most famous and influential artists in the world, has been causing global outrage.
Companies are severing ties with Ye, the artist formerly known as Kanye West.
Kanye has been problematic in terms of his rhetoric for a very long time.
Until recently, Kanye was reported to be the richest black man in America ever, with a fortune of over $6 billion. And although that title was always disputed, he was certainly one of only a handful of black billionaires in America. In the past couple of weeks, though, the 47-year-old has lost so much of his fortune that he's probably no longer a member of this exclusive club.
In Christianity, we don't say karma. We say you reap what you sow. And I feel like this is God humbling me right now.
If God is humbling Kanye, he's using some of the world's biggest brands to do it. Adidas, Gap, Balenciaga, they have all cut ties with Kanye. Apple is limiting access to his music, and his talent agency CAA, the world's biggest, has dropped him as a client. Meanwhile, Twitter and Instagram locked his accounts, for a while at least. Even a visit to Skechers went disastrously wrong.
He showed up uninvited at the Skechers store in Manhattan Beach and was promptly kicked out of the building.
All of this is feeding the satirists who have taken the chance to add insult to injury.
It took Adidas so many days to decide not to work with them. I mean, he walked in and we were like, bye, bye-bye, door.
So why then have these companies and Silicon Valley turned on one of their biggest earners? It wasn't because he said, outrageously, slavery is a choice, or because he claimed that George Floyd died of a drugs overdose. It has little to do with how he offended many of his fellow African Americans. It has got everything to do with his incendiary remarks about Jews.
What he is saying is just...
It's full of hate. I mean, there's no way around it.
It's terrible. It's terrible. And I don't even want to repeat it all.
This whole saga began when fellow rapper P. Diddy criticized Ye for wearing a White Lives Matter t-shirt in a fashion show.
I will always support my brother. Kanye is a free thinker. But the White Lives Matter t-shirt, I don't rock with it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not with it.
Ye hit back by suggesting that Diddy was controlled by Jews, texting him, "I'm going to use you as an example to show the Jewish people that told you to call me that no one can threaten or influence me." Having uploaded that message to Instagram, Ye switched to Twitter to say, "I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but when I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people." Now, Ye subsequently said he meant to use the word def, meaning defense and not death. But this clarification came too late. Twitter and Instagram locked his accounts, and many in the mainstream media, including one of CNN's Jewish anchors, Jake Tapper, expressed their disgust.
Kanye wasn't blocked from Twitter and Instagram because he challenged critical race theory or vaccine mandates. It was because he threatened to kill Jews.
With the mainstream media uniformly against Kanye, the beleaguered hip-hop star mounted his own defense on conservative TV and with channels on YouTube.
Are the people, the Jewish businessmen that led me to that place, are they sorry for the way they've raped my
I don't know
people?
who you're talking about in particular, but I don't know why you keep having to say
And
they're
by the way,
Jewish.
you wouldn't-
What does the
but you
fact
would-
they're Jewish got to do with anything? Why do you keep
What
doing that?
do you mean? They're the Jewish businessmen that did that because
They're business
they are.
people.
That's what they did.
Why do you keep saying Jewish business people?
90% of black people in entertainment, from sports to music to acting, are in some way tied into Jewish business people.
It's a person, not Jewish. Let me just say one thing.
But they are, though. That's the only thing. It just so happens that they are.
Despite Ye's attempt to explain his position, it's very unlikely his former business partners are going to reconcile with him anytime soon, which Kanye says proves his point exactly.
What's happening right now is I'm being humbled. Another thing that's happening is by me being burned to the flesh every single day, it's actually proving what I had to say.
And on that controversial story, we have to leave it. For those of you celebrating, Merry Christmas, have a Happy New Year, and we'll see you again in 2023.